really shiny and bright in the background. So any digital camera, if you zoom in, the Galilean moons will show up. So right now, if you remember the teapot, behind it a little bit is where Jupiter's going to be. Jupiter's brightest can be the moon. Last month was so close to Jupiter for one day, I thought it was going to, they call it occultation when it actually goes behind it and disappears. So again, in about 3 more weeks, it's going to happen that Jupiter and the moon are going to be real close together. So when everybody goes out and goes, hey, what star is that? You can act like an Einstein and go, it's not a star, it's Jupiter. Jupiter and Venus are the 2 stars that are the brightest. Saturn gets kind of bright, but Saturn is just as far away from Jupiter on the other side as Jupiter is from us. So it's way out there. And right now the rings of Saturn are so even that if you look, it's just going to look pretty boring. You can't even see the rings of Saturn. I was telling everybody this for the last 5 years. You better go look now, because 13 years, which is like what, 6.5 years to go one side or the other? 6.5 years till they're fully on. So 6.5 years ago was 2005, 4, 3. I was telling everybody, you better go out and look at Saturn now, because the rings were great. Right now it's even on. I think a couple days ago, August 9th was the day that it's straight on. You won't see anything rings, but they're starting to come back around. So now we're actually going to see the back side of the rings. First you see the front and the back. So for our sky chart here, we don't even see Jupiter in the plane of the ecliptic. They call it the path of the ecliptic. So Jupiter and Neptune are actually pretty close together. Uranus is way out there. You can't really even see that with a telescope. So at nighttime, Jupiter is visible. I suggest going out. Got a good digital video camera? Take your zoom and zoom in on it. Hold it as still as you can. You're going to see these little bright specks show up. Those are the moons of Jupiter. They're going to look like stars. One is way out there, and you'll think it's a star. Go back and look the next night. So the moon and the moons of Jupiter are the 2 things that astronomers take for granted. They want to go out and look at things way deep out in the sky. I'd rather look at a 35 millimeter slide of the Hubble at a nebula than to go out and look through some telescope, stand in line if you ever go to Griffith Observatory, stand in line a half hour to go out and look at a nebula that's puny. I'd rather look at a giant 35 millimeter slide with all the colors. Of course, that's just me. Let's see what else we had here. The star chart's proven to be kind of boring here. But the way to use a star chart is, if you remember where the sun sets, the plane of the ecliptic, all the zodiac signs have to be in it. We're exactly 6 months off from when the birthday is. I noticed this with Pisces. My friend's sister was a Pisces. And I said, oh, well, you won't be able to see it because it's behind the sun. Well, there I am standing at Pismo Beach. The sun sets. I see the 2 stars of Gemini, the 2 stars. Yeah, I guess they are stars, okay. So the 2 stars that are the main ones that you see, they're Procyon, and there's even names. I don't get into the names of them. But you could tell it was Gemini. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. If her birthday was in Gemini, and it's supposed to be behind the sun, how come you can see it when the sun sets? Well, that says that because of the precession of the earth and the way it turns, we're 1 zodiac off. So this kind of cracks me up too when you see people talking about doing your astral charts and your signs and where you were born and blah, 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 blah. The whole system is 1 off already. So, but it is interesting because there is astronomy in astrology. When they say, where was Mars? Mars was in your house. Well, that means when you looked at the plane of the ecliptic, you were born, say when Sagittarius here, okay, you were born right around Christmas time. Where were the planets? Like if you were born now, Jupiter is way out in the house, I think they call it of. What would that one be? That would be in Capricorn, okay? And then next to that is Aquarius. Okay, so the planets, when you're born, could be in your house, I think they call it. I don't know that much astrology. So there is something to it. The planets are in the constellations of the zodiac. You won't see Jupiter in Hercules. You won't see Jupiter in Orion. Orion's close to the borderline. I've seen Saturn was real close a couple years ago, but that's the borderline of the zodiac signs, as they call it. So I thought it was pretty interesting that the planets move, but the way that the gravity holds the planets in the orbit around the sun, they're all in a flat plane, and the way we are when we look and we see and all that, they all follow the same path. So what's neat is a retrograde. Okay, every night, do this. You see where Jupiter is now, okay? Jupiter's going to get closer and closer and closer to the sunset. Mars was doing this. Venus will do it too. Since they're closer, it'll get closer and closer and closer, but then it'll start getting further and further and further every night, okay? That's called a retrograde, the way we go around and we kind of pass up one. So it's kind of cool to see. Imagine the old people, the old days. You know, they go, okay, Mars is following. Every night it gets closer to the sunset. Pretty soon it's behind it. Pretty soon it's in it. You can't really see it. So what happens? All of a sudden it starts going the other way. There's a lot of things we know now that we didn't know when I was a kid many years ago. Venus actually turns backwards. It takes 88 days for one revolution, one turn, rotation of Venus, what they call one Venetian day. 88 days to turn once. It's turning backwards. Uranus, spinning sideways. The rings are sideways. The moons are orbiting sideways, but it's got a magnetic field that's in the middle of the planet that's upright. But it's a gaseous planet. So what's in the core of Uranus that gives it a magnetic field? The Earth has a magnetic field. Venus has a magnetic field. Mars doesn't. Why they want to go to Mars, I can kind of imagine, but I'll tell you, being a chemist, Venus is the place I like. You got a heat on the surface that'll melt lead. You got it raining sulfuric acid. You got clouds. You got stuff's happening on a chemical point of view in Venus. That's the place to be. Mars, might as well go out to Bakersfield. Okay, so that is our star chart that was kind of lame. Let's go now to our electromagnetic spectrum. See if we can hone in on this. Back it up there, George. And let's see, can we turn this sideways? Yeah, we can go sideways on it. We have to wrap it up here. The electromagnetic spectrum. Light is wave, light is photon. It's both. Duality, they call it. When you look at long waves, consider it a wave, it's easier to compare things. Long waves, 30 meters, 90 feet, 100 feet, one wavelength. In the old days when we used to listen to radio, you drove in between buildings or something, that wave would get cut off, the radio would fade out. Now they got all kinds of different things that your satellite will go down and re-radiate and all that off it. So, waves that you look at and analyze, radio waves, long waves. Microwaves are actually centimeter size waves. There's micro, which means 10 to the minus 6, which is a micrometer, micrometer. So a microwave is not a micro length meter. Centimeters are what microwaves are. The microwave, so to speak, the centimeter length of that wave is enough to excite the protons, the hydrogens out there on the water. And our time is up. And it's a wrap. Wrap is short for crap. DVD's probably rolling, but we're out of it now.